Imagine you're back in the room. Last week, we turned on the light. Maybe you've started clearing a few things out. Maybe you hit an old belief, a painful memory, a story you've been carrying for years. And it feels pretty good. The room is beginning to breathe again. It's a little more space. Then you pick something up. You know it no longer belongs. You know you've outgrown it. You've talked about it in therapy. You've journaled about it. You have cried over it. You've even told your friends you're finally ready to just let it go. But your hand won't open. Why? Why is letting go so incredibly hard? I don't think it's because we're attached to our pain. I think we're attached to who we've become because of our pain. And that changes everything. Because today, we're going to explore one of the deepest questions on the healing journey. Not, how do I let go? Instead, who am I without what I've been carrying? Stay with me. Because by the end of this conversation, I think you'll understand why healing isn't about becoming someone new. It's about remembering who has been underneath the identities all along. Hello, and welcome to the Aligned Human Project. If you're joining me for the first time, my name is Elgin, creator of Field and Form, the 12 Laws of Co-Creation, and the Aligned Human Project. Over the past couple of weeks, we've been exploring what it really means to move from survival mindset to alignment mindset. We've begun discovering that awareness doesn't change your life. Awareness simply turns on the light. Then last week, we stepped into the room. That room represents what I call the field of mind. It's where we experience being human. It's where beliefs, identities, memories, emotional patterns, survival strategies, and meaning have accumulated over time. And I shared something that has become one of my foundational teachings of my work. The room isn't you. You're the one standing in the doorway. You are the witness. Today, we're taking the next step because once you've turned on the light, and once you begun clearing the room, you discovered something unexpected. Some things are surprisingly easy to release, while others feel impossible. Why? That's what we're exploring today. I want you to imagine you're standing in the room again or at the threshold, and you've already filled a few donation boxes. You've thrown away things that obviously no longer belong. You've thanked your grandmother for the doily. You've started to make some space. And then you notice something on a shelf. Maybe it's an old trophy. Maybe it's a diploma. Maybe it's a title. Or maybe it's a photograph. Maybe it's simply a little card that says, the responsible one. You know it no longer belongs in your life, the one that you're creating. You reach for it, and suddenly you can't let it go. Not because it's valuable, because somewhere along the way, you stopped believing you owned it. You started believing it was you. And I think this is one of the biggest misunderstandings about healing. We think we're trying to let go of the object, and we're actually not. We're trying to let go of the identity we've built around it. That's why healing can feel like dying. Not because your soul is disappearing, because your survival identity actually believes it. And survival mind will fight to protect whatever it believes will keep you safe, even when that very thing is keeping you stuck. That's why awareness alone is not enough. Awareness shows you the object. Alignment gives you the courage to gently place it down. Let's pause for a moment and look at what actually is happening in the brain. Because if you've ever thought, why is this so freaking hard? I want you to know your brain is doing exactly what it was designed to do. One of the brain's primary jobs is to create stable sense of self. Psychologists call this our self schema or our narrative identity. And over time, the brain builds an internal story about who we are based on repeated experiences, not necessarily true experiences, interpreted experiences. Just think about that for a moment. A child experiences rejection. The event happened once, but the meaning the child created might be, I'm not lovable. Another child experiences criticism. The event happens, but the meaning becomes, I have to be perfect. A third child grows up feeling responsible for everyone else's emotions. And the meaning becomes, my value comes from taking care of everyone else. The event becomes a story, and then the story becomes an identity or a mask. And eventually, the identity begins organizing our whole lives. That's why I often say the field of mind isn't where we simply store memories. It's where we organize meaning. And meaning is powerful because your nervous system doesn't just respond to what is happening. It responds to what your mind believes happened. That's why two people can live through the same event and leave with completely different identities. One leaves believing, I am resilient, and the other one leaves believing, I'm broken. Same event, same house they grew up in, different meaning, different room. So let's go back into the room. You're standing there holding that old trophy. And maybe you're smiling because it reminds you of a wonderful time in your life. But then something unexpected happens. You hear yourself say, I've always been the achiever. Or I've always been the strong one. I've always been the responsible one. I've always been the peacekeeper. I've always been the one who fixes everything. Have you noticed the language? I've always been. What if that isn't who you've always been? What if it's simply the role you accepted because it helped you survive? You can feel how different those two things are. One says, this is who I am. And the other says, this is who I learned to become. That's the beginning of freedom. Because if something was learned, then it can also be lovingly released or unlearned. Imagine you're carrying a backpack. You've had it on for so long, you've forgotten it's even there. Just habitual. Every year, someone quietly slips another rock inside. A teacher, a parent, a relationship, maybe a boss, a disappointment, a success that became your identity. Eventually, that backpack starts feeling pretty heavy. You go to the gym, you get a little stronger. You become incredibly good at carrying that weight. Everyone even compliments you. You are so strong. You can handle everything. You never complain. Meanwhile, no one thinks to ask, why are you carrying the backpack in the first place? That's what so many high performers do. We become extraordinary at carrying unnecessary weight. Not because we're weak, because we've confused carrying with living. And here's the difficult truth. The survival mind would rather become stronger than put the backpack down. Ouch. Because at least it knows who it is with the backpack. Without it, there's uncertainty, and uncertainty feels very unsafe. This is one of the reasons identity change feels so uncomfortable. Your brain is constantly trying to maintain coherence, not just coherence between your heart and your mind, but coherence between today's experience and yesterday's identity. So when you begin acting differently, setting boundaries, maybe, saying no, resting, or how about receiving help, speaking your truth, your brain immediately compares that behavior to its existing identity. This is not who we are, and that discomfort isn't proof you're making a wrong choice. Often, it's evidence you're stepping beyond an identity that no longer fits. This is one of the great paradoxes of transformation. The very behaviors that create freedom can initially feel unfamiliar and even frightening. Not because they're wrong, because they're new. And the survival mind always prefers the familiar over the possible. That's why alignment isn't a feeling, it's a practice. It's the repeated practice of choosing from the witness rather than the survival mind again and again and again until what once felt unfamiliar begins feeling like home. This is why I love looking through the lens of the 5 elements, because each element develops different identities in order to feel safe. Wood may become the achiever, the leader, the one who always pushes through. Fire may become the one everyone likes, the entertainer, the connector. Earth often becomes the caretaker, the dependable one, the person everyone leans on. Whereas metal may become the perfectionist, the expert, the one who never gets it wrong. Oof, that's stress. Water may become the quiet one, the observer, the independent one. Notice something? None of these identities are bad. In fact, many of them helped you become successful. The question isn't, are they good or are they bad? The question is, do they still belong in the room? Or have they quietly become the walls that keep you from experiencing who you really are? And that's where I would like us to go next. So where does that leave us? If we've spent years building an identity, if we've spent decades carrying these stories, who are we without them? I think that's the question most people are actually afraid of. Not, what if I fail? But who will I be if I no longer need to survive this way? Imagine for a moment that you've been standing in your room for a while now. The light is on. The room feels calmer. You've released things that no longer sparked joy. You've thanked your grandmother, your great-great-grandmother for the doilies. You've opened the trunk and begun taking out one thing at a time. And the room is beginning to feel different. Not because you've become someone new, because you're no longer surrounded by the things you never were. Then something remarkable happens. For the first time, you notice the space. The room begins to feel clear. And in that moment, you realize something. The goal was never to empty the room just for the sake of emptying it. The goal was to create enough space for possibility, because a clear room is full of potential. And this is where so many people stop. They become so focused on what they're letting go of. They never ask, what wants to emerge. This is where field and form comes alive. An event happens. We assign meaning. That meaning becomes a belief. That belief shapes our thoughts. Our thoughts influence our emotions, and our emotions drive our actions. Our actions become habits, and our habits become patterns, and those patterns become an identity. Your identity becomes the personality, and the personality creates your personal reality. And it all begins with meaning, which means if we become aware of the meaning we've been carrying, we can begin choosing a different one. That's why awareness matters. It's vital. It's first. Not because awareness changes reality, because awareness gives us the opportunity to change the interpretation that has been creating it. Every reality begins with a repeated interpretation, and the witness is the only part of us capable of lovingly questioning that interpretation. So I'd like to leave you with a practice this week. The next time you notice yourself saying, I'm just the responsible one, or I'm just anxious, or I'm just a perfectionist, I'm just a peacekeeper, I'm just the one who always has to be strong. I want you to pause, take one slow breath, and ask yourself 3 questions. Is this who I am? Or is this something I've been carrying? Just let it sit. If it's something you've been carrying, then ask yourself one more question. Who is trying to emerge? Just sit with that. Don't rush to the answer. Let your body answer before your mind does. Because I don't believe your deepest self needs to be invented. I know it has been patiently waiting beneath everything you've been carrying. And finally, ask yourself, if that version of me were standing here right now, what would they choose? Not tomorrow, not next year. Today, one choice, one conversation, one boundary, one act of courage, one act of compassion. That is alignment. As we close today, I want to leave you with one final thought. When you were born, you inherited a room. It came partially furnished. Some of what you received was beautiful. Some of it was painful. Some of it belonged to generations before you, and none of it made you who you are. It simply became what surrounded you. Your parents gave you what was theirs in their room. Their parents did the same. And for generations, human beings have unknowingly passed rooms from one generation to the next. Not because they wanted their children to suffer, because they didn't know another way. But today, you do. You don't have to blame the people who started furnishing your room. You don't have to keep everything they left inside it either. Honor the love. Honor the wisdom. Honor the resilience. Honor the courage. But lovingly release the fear, the shame, the silence, the perfectionism, the belief that your worth has to be earned. Your ancestors are not asking you to continue their suffering. I believe they're standing behind you, smiling, cheering you on, hoping you'll become the generation that says, it stops here, not from anger, not from resentment, but from love. Because that's how trauma recreation ends, not through blame, through compassionate responsibility. This week, I invite you to spend a few minutes in your room. Don't try to clean the whole thing. Just notice and pick up one thing and ask yourself, does this still belong in the room? Does this spark joy? And if the answer is no, thank it, bless it, and then let it go. Then ask, who's trying to emerge now that there's a little more space? I'd love to hear what comes up for you. Share it in the comments. And if you're ready to go deeper, download the 5 Elements of Alignment Assessment. It's below. It's designed to help you recognize the survival strategies that have quietly been furnishing your room for years. The room isn't you. The furniture isn't you. The trunk isn't you. The identities are not you. You are the one standing in the doorway, the one holding the light, the one who gets to choose. Awareness is the light. Alignment chooses what stays, and creation allows what has always been true to emerge. The witness is the painter. The field of mind prepares the colors. The body holds the brush. The field organizes the stroke, and reality becomes the canvas. You don't try to repaint your entire life today. Just choose your next brushstroke, because you are the witness. You shape the field, and the field shapes your life. I'll see you next week.